Hey guys, so lots of feral changes with the first alpha build. The key changes are they're slowing down energy to make it more tactical. They're also restoring Tiger's Fury to more of a burst kind of CD, and I guess more of a snapshotting CD as well, rather than a maintenance buff. I'll talk more about these later, but also simplifying some talent functionality to free up where you spend points. I do kind of feel they've done the opposite in reality, but we'll talk about that. So kind of talking about, squeezing and bites being, good gameplay, which, goes with the slowing down of energy, but they're also removing AOE Bite and explicitly stating they want you to spam Primal Wrath in AOE, which is probably the worst change for me, but yeah, we'll talk about that. But just remember, it's the start of alpha. Things can change, they can revert things. Make sure you let them know what you think, like the official forum and whatever. Obviously, they're not intentionally trying to make feral worse, but yeah, there's some controversial changes here. So we have some new talents here. Not particularly interesting, especially this one, 2% Verse, 2% Leech, no gameplay and no synergies with it. Coil to Spring, this replaces Dire Fixation. Basically, they want you to finish with 5 combo points with this talent. So if you're at 4 combo points, you crit and you lose a combo point due to Primal Fury. You're not punished for that, but there's some issues here. So, firstly, I don't like the fact that it's quite a boring talent that replaces Dire Fixation. It feels like a talent that's just kind of fixing things rather than something you actually want to pick. Also rewards mistakes, like during Berserk. They say it in the blue post, but if you go above 3 stacks of overflowing power, then this counts. But if you're doing that, you're making rotational mistakes, so kind of stupid. Also, it doesn't buff Rip, so you could bite with 4 combo points if your next finisher is going to be Rip. So there's no benefit there. Also, what happens if you untalent this? Will you just go back to using 4 and then when you talent it, use 5? It's going to get very confusing. So lots of issues there. But anyway, next one is Savage Fury. This one's a bit better. It adds some front-loaded burst to Tiger's Fury. Has a bit of synergy with this new Predator, which makes Shred and Brutal Slash get buffed by Haste more. But pretty minor. Tiny bit of burst. They're trying to make Tiger's Fury more impactful. I think it's a good talent, but I don't like the fact that it's where Rampant Ferocity was, but we'll talk more about that later. What's next? So Mastery now includes LI and Swarm. It doesn't mention Bite here, but in the alpha, Bite is still included, so I think this is just a typo. So with this Predator change and with this Mastery change, Mastery now includes almost everything, and same with Haste, which is kind of dumbing down the identity of secondary stats, but not too fussed, but I'm not a huge fan either. Also, yeah, Predator no longer gives the Tiger's Fury resets, which is a bit of a controversial change. Obviously, Predator was super fun, but it was kind of OP, especially having it basically baseline here. You just always had it, so you picked it no matter what, and that kind of made it a bit degenerate, especially in AoE. I do kind of like the fact they're making Tiger's Fury more impactful, but with this talent, it's kind of a boring replacement, right? Doesn't really change gameplay or anything. It's just kind of like core functionality kind of built into the spec. So, with Raging Fury also changed. We'll get into that soon. Tiger's Fury is now just going to be a 20-second window. So a little bit of burst, but it's not even that interesting from a burst perspective because 20 seconds is quite a long time. But yeah, I do vibe with the intention here. I would like to see Tiger's Fury being more impactful rather than just a maintenance buff, but I think the problem is they replaced a fun talent with this. But yeah, it's going to make Bloodlust better. Big concern is PI. So with Feral, they're making Berserk flat 2 minutes now as well. With this, adding haste value to Shred and Brutal Slash. I'm concerned that Feral's going to be a PI target, which kind of, we lose identity being super bursty. PI exacerbates that. And so much of our damage would come from CDs. And if you don't have PI, then you're just going to feel terrible. You're going to be doing less than you're supposed to, worse than every other Feral. But hopefully that's not going to be the reality, but it is very much a big concern of mine. But yeah, overall, I'm okay with the Predator being changed. I just don't really like what they've replaced it with, to be honest. They also changed Taste for Blood. It no longer has interaction with bleeds, so there's lost synergy with all your bleeds. Things like Rip and Tear, it gave AoE value to a single target-ish talent like Taste for Blood with synergy like that. Berserk Frenzy, it gave synergy with more damage in your CDs. You could cast Rip Feral Frenzy, Rip Through, Rip and Tear, and Feral Frenzy obviously is another bleed into your Convoke, or even just squeezing in bites afterwards. That gameplay is all lost now. Also the Ravage dot, which is the new name for massive attack. There's a node in that which makes Feral Frenzy 40 seconds, so it aligns with your 2-minute CDs. The TFB synergy there is now lost. Even the vines, like biting while the vines are up, not as much gameplay there, but always kind of nice to have those little things. But I don't know, kind of like TFB and Infected Wounds was such a good build option, especially for Mythic Plus. You choose single target funnel with Taste of Blood versus AOE cleave with Infected Wounds and with like Double Claw Rake. So, you know, it depends how they tune this. They could still make it a good option, but now, you know, you have to have this to have this. I don't think that's very good. I don't really like the loss of synergies. Also, with the Tiger's Fury change, when we're Primal Wrath spamming in AoE, when our Tiger's Fury falls off, the next Primal Wrath is going to override our Rip with a weaker one. But instead, they could have added incentive here to Bite instead. So you don't overwrite your Rips with a weaker one, and then, you know, you can do some prior damage. But because they're instead making Bite do a lot more damage in Tiger's Fury, it loses this incentive here. So, like, I think there's a missed opportunity. You know, they could have just kept the old system, and then, you know, your last Primal Wrath before Tiger's Fury falls off, you snapshot, then you try and weave in some bites, not to overwrite your Tiger's Fury. So, I don't know, this goes against the Tiger's Fury rework, in my opinion. And yeah, you lose all these synergies, little bits of gameplay, just not a good change. Next up, they're compressing Berserk's duration to 15 seconds and Incarn's to 20 seconds, most likely to fit it in the new Tiger's Fury window. Not a big deal. One issue is if you're running Convoke, which you always pair with Berserk now because Berserk is flat 2 minutes, you're spending 4 seconds channeling, only 15-second duration. You're losing a lot of your Berserk duration and Berserk gameplay when you're playing Convoke. Also, it's a slight identity loss because Convoke was always the short burst CD, Incarn was the longer sustained burst. You know, it's still that way, but, you know, less so. So slight identity loss. But yeah, perfectly syncing Berserk and Convoke now. There's no options, there's no thought anymore how to use your Convoke, whether you sync them, whether you use it for CDR and try and maximize Berserk uses. All that's kind of lost, which is disappointing. Solar Forest's been nerfed from 3 energy to 2 per combo point. It's going to affect Apex, obviously. Apex builds are going to be less spammy, but probably going to affect Berserk the hardest because you're spamming a lot of finishes inside Berserk and you're getting a lot of Soul the Forest refunds. So maybe now you won't bite at low energy anymore, and you have to utilize your ticking CPs more, which I think is a good thing, but those are some implications. So next up, Sabertooth has been reworked. Now only affects one target and it affects all your periodic effects, and it's going to be 15% with maximum combo points. So things like Rake, Thrash, even Moonfire going to be buffed by this now. That is a good thing, although I did like the old version as well. I think this is like kind of a neutral change. It's got good things and bad things about it. I think they did this, like replacing Dire Fixation with this was kind of the intention or part of it. But yeah, there's lost synergies like Sabertooth and Tear Open Wounds was a really fun synergy, and, you know, Biteweaving, that added incentive to trying to squeeze in bites, especially inside of Berserk. And, you know, that goes with this, like where you could Biteweave inside of Berserk, not only because of Sabertooth, but because you're generating combo points so quickly, you clip a lot of Rip's duration. So there was incentive to weave your bites because you're not wasting any Rip time, and you're also getting a higher Sabertooth uptime to then weave in Tear Open Wounds. So, you know, Berserk Biteweaving was really fun. Like, it basically gave you priority damage without really losing any AoE damage. Now you're only spamming Tear Open Wounds, so there's just less gameplay options. Just not a big fan of this and kind of the AoE changes in general. So next up, Moonfire lasts 2 seconds longer in cat form. It's not a huge deal, but it is kind of boring. We do have less energy now, so it might be a little bit harder to maintain, but I guess the added duration kind of goes against that. So I don't really know what the point is. Like, if they're nerfing energy for better gameplay, why are they doing this? It doesn't really make sense to me, but it's not the end of the world. Moment of Clarity is nerfed. This is a really good change. Omen procs were way too spammy. You didn't really have time to react. Well, you couldn't really react to them because you're spamming so much and they're proccing so frequently. Now with the spec slowed down a little bit, you can react better, less spamming, and also less procs. So it should feel good to use, because previously, like, you might be at like high energy, you try and deplete energy, but Omen keeps proccing and then you're overcapping. That never felt good, so I think this is a good way to nerf energy. Next is Berserk Heart Alliance, now flat 60 seconds. So yeah, it removes all synergies with abilities and talents that provide CDR, which is kind of the big theme of today, lost synergies. Apex, Convoke, energy talents, sudden ambush, even Berserk itself, you could farm a lot of CDR in. Yeah, you lose like CDR gameplay, choosing how to use your Berserk, whether you sync it with certain trinkets or Convoke, holding it, sending it, if the boss is about to die or whatever. Also, you just lose the feel of this talent, because you could actually notice your Berserk CD dropping when you use finishing moves. Now it's just flat 60 seconds. It's super boring, and it's kind of, you're just talenting core functionality now. Again, it feels like a lot of these changes, you're just kind of, there's no gameplay, no synergy. It's just core things that maybe should just be baseline instead now. But yeah, what else? So yeah, forcing 2 minutes. Also, it kills trinket options, because if there's a 2-minute trinket in the season, we're running it. Like other trinkets, that don't sync up with CDs had a lot more value with the old version of this, because you could maximize Berserk uses and play trinkets with weird CD timings or trinkets that didn't synergize with CDs. So say next season you could play Grief Torch and you could send your Grief Torch on CD, send your Berserk on CD, especially with like a left-right build or Incarn in Mythic Plus. So it's just, bad for trinkets, bad for direct damage trinkets, which are already kind of bad for us. And yeah, like Convoke also equals Incarn now. They're both 2-minute CDs. So, losing some identity between these two, not only, how I was talking about before with shorter Incarn duration, but now they're the exact same CD timer no matter what. So just not good. You just can't customize your CDs anymore. So really awful change. Talent is completely passive now, no gameplay, no interaction. We're just talenting core functionality. So next up, Raging Fury has been designed, which was the Tiger's Fury extension with combo points. It's now a flat 5-second duration to Tiger's Fury. Same with Predator. So you're basically talenting Tiger's Fury. You're talenting another passive here for 5 seconds and another passive here for another 5 seconds. Kind of like Berserk, you're talenting 3 Berserks, but at least these were previously interesting. They had gameplay to them. Now, yeah, we're just talenting more core functionality here. I think the issues with Raging Fury, it was degenerate because Tiger's Fury lasted way too long, but they would have solved this by slowing down the energy, which they are. This new version, it's got no synergies, no gameplay to it. It felt good, like the extension did feel good, even if it was overtuned or kind of as a consequence of Feral being quite spammy for a lot of Dragonflight. So a lot of talent synergies and so on lost. We now have 2 super generic Tiger's Fury talents that could have just been baked into Tiger's Fury. But yeah, just really not happy with this change. No synergies, no gameplay, and boring talents. Next up, by far my biggest issue with the changes is the removal of Rampant Ferocity, AOE Bite, and them saying basically you should only Primal Wrath spam in AOE. So bad for so many reasons. You lose AOE decisions, weaving in bites for, say, priority damage or other reasons, which you have to spend combo points and energy on. You have to factor in the rip timer, especially if you're playing Tear Open Wounds as well and you want to benefit from Tear Open Wounds as well. So weaving in bite in time to also Primal Wrath again to Tear Open Wounds. So really bad here. Also, decision not to overwrite Blood Talons. So if you run out of BT charges, instead of Primal Wrathing and overriding your rips with a weaker one, you could instead bite, and it was a small gain to do so. Plus, anytime RF is a small gain, it's also priority damage as well factored in. So that just felt good because it feels bad overriding your BT. This kind of facilitated a window where you can bite instead. And same with Tiger's Fury, right? Because they're changing Tiger's Fury. There's going to be downtime on Tiger's Fury. So instead of overriding your rip with Tiger's Fury, you could instead AoE bite. And that would have been amazing gameplay, but they've just removed this when, if anything, more reason than ever to keep it in. But yeah, also there's RF only builds where you just constantly weaving in bites and kind of refreshing rip late. So you're always factoring in like energy, rip timer, things like that. There's also Berserk weaving, so a lot of synergy where you're utilizing your extra combo points inside of Berserk. to sort of alternate finishes. There's synergy with Sabertooth, Tear Open Wounds, things like that. And yeah, again, you're getting more priority damage. So yeah, you're not able to build for your situation anymore and your playstyle. It's also lost synergies with like Convoke, certain trinkets. Like this season, you could run Ashes, Convoke, RF if you want a huge amount of like AOE burst damage. That option is just completely gone. There was synergy with energy talents, especially with RF only builds. So I ran Tireless Energy a lot this season when I was playing RF only, and also with RF only, this is way more fun than Primal Rationale. Like if they had to delete one, I would prefer they deleted Tear Open Wounds, but I don't think they should have deleted. I don't think they should delete any really, because there's 3 distinct AOE builds. You know, with RF, Tear Open Wounds, you know, one or the other or both. Now it's only Tear Open Wounds, and you know that trickles down, because if you're playing RF and you're funneling more, that gives value to Bite talents, Vein Ripper, funnel talents, yeah, energy talents as I mentioned. So in terms of builds, we're losing so many builds, and look what they've added to this row. Like this is garbage. This is mediocre at best in terms of, you know, how interesting it is. Rampant Ferocity was one of the most impactful, one of the most interesting talents. It added so many builds to Feral. It's just, it is by far the worst change. Like lastly, we'll talk about the energy changes, and this is pretty big. Probably shouldn't have left it to last. And I do largely like the changes because it's just more interesting, makes energy more tactical, as they noted, because dots are way too easy to maintain right now. It means you end up spamming heaps of filler like Shred and Bites, which makes the damage profile look bad. Doesn't feel good when Bites like all of your damage. I think this kind of squeezing in Bites is a lot better for gameplay, more interesting. BT is a lot more interesting because you know, make sure you have the energy to use all 3 builders in the window. Whereas right now it's just way too passive and quite boring. But yeah, like saving energy for key moments, Tiger's Fury, the energy from Tiger's Fury feeling more impactful, things like that. I think those are all good changes. Obviously, this is going to be very subjective, this one. I know some people won't like it, but I do think it's best for the spec. But you know, I think it does make up for some of the changes. Like I can understand them removing kind of gameplay or complexity in some areas, like say die fixation or whatever, and instead, you know, adding this, or rather changing energy to this. But I think there's a lot of issues where, like this tree now, you know, die fixation had gameplay. Now it's just a passive spend at 5 combo points. Rampant Ferocity, it had a lot of gameplay. Now it's this, which is very tiny bit of gameplay, and also this, which is just nothing. It's terrible. Raging Fury, there was gameplay there, extending your target's fury. Now it's 5 seconds duration, exact same as this talent. So now you're talenting Tiger's Fury 3 times just to get its functionality, you know, working. Kind of like Berserk. Like previously, these talents, you talent 3 Berserk talents, but these did something. They changed things. Now this is just flat 2-minute Berserk. It's just functionality now. It's not interesting. It doesn't feel good to talent that kind of stuff. So all these little changes, like I don't really like. So hopefully they kind of walk back on a few things. I think they went probably too far. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about, I guess, everything. Also the energy. A lot of this is going to be very subjective. It's very opinionated, this video, I would imagine. But just wanted to get this out. So yeah, I think that's everything. I'm going to cover the class tree maybe in another video. I might kind of wait, see if they make any changes. It's not too bad. Like, it's not amazing either though, but I think it's the first iteration. I think is promising at least. But yeah, thanks for watching guys, and yeah, let me know what you guys think.